We made this.
Hello and welcome to Geek Polymath, the podcast about conversations with experts in a geeky thing with someone who is just kind of into it. My name's Mark Adams and I am the Geek Polymath, and every month I have a chat with someone who's really into something, and I quite like it. This month I'm having a conversation about craft beer, and who better than someone who owns a fucking brewery. Welcome to the podcast, Chris Clough.
Hey Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. Tell me about yourself and your brewery to begin with. Show me your credentials, because, you know, I like beer, but you're, like, in beer.
Yeah, beer does pretty much rule everything around me, if you want to put it that way. Bream, nice. The brewery is kind of homebrew, got massively out of hand, is how we generally describe it. There's three of us were all brewing in our own garages or kitchens or whatever, and then brewing way too much to drink, so we decided to inflict it on the wider public. And yeah, we've been brewing for 6.5 years now, although the last 2 years obviously don't really count.
They've not been ideal for anyone, really, have they?
Yeah, but we mostly brew quite sensible beers, but we've got a reputation for brewing stupid smoked beers and barley wines because we do that every now and then, and it's the kind of thing that catches people's eye.
And it's Torrside Brewery, right?
Torrside Brewing, yeah, that's
probably
an important thing to start with.
Yeah. So where is it based?
We are based in New Mills, which is just on the edge of the Peak District, about 200 metres outside Greater Manchester. So we get invited to Greater Manchester events, and then when it suits us, we pretend we're an East Midlands brewery and get invited to stuff over there as well.
Was that deliberate?
No, it just kind of happened quite happily. We're technically in the East Midlands here, even though we're like 25 minutes from Manchester.
Yeah. Well, my journey here
was
25 minutes.
traffic permitting.
Yeah, school run traffic. I should have thought about that, really.
Yeah. There's never a good time to drive out this way.
But so you just randomly kind of bumped into two other home brewers as you started to become vaguely serious of it. Was it all just coincidence, or was there a plan?
It was bits of it a coincidence then, and plans kind of came later. We moved to New Mills, about 13 years ago?
Bloody hell, was it that long ago?
Yeah, it has gone quite fast, hasn't it?
Shit.
And just by coincidence, Peter and Nick, the other two guys at the brewery, both moved to New Mills almost at the same time. And we kind of met via social media, not even good social media, via Untapped, which is a real tragic beer geek app for logging what beers you drink and rating them. And we found that we were all drinking in the same events, like same venues, same sort of beers, similarly kind of scathing about rubbish, and kind of became friends through that.
I love that there's an app. There's an app for people who drink beers. I suppose there's an app for literally everything.
Yeah, there's at least 3 apps. There may be more. I've had to go on some kind of detox off doing that because my other half was getting too pissed off with it. So,
Do you just like go on and rate your own beers 5 stars and everyone else?
No, I've seen brewers do that, but no, we didn't. No, we know at least a couple of Manchester brewers who are guilty of that.
Right. Well, let's not.
I'm not going to name names. No.
So before we actually get into the main questions, I've so far picked 2 things that I don't know whether they kind of count as geek. I think the definition of geek has very much expanded over the last 5 or 10 years. And I think anyone who's really likes something could call themselves a geek now. Can you be a craft ale geek?
I would probably describe myself as a beer geek. It's kind of a fairly commonly accepted term. I'd say my criteria for being a beer geek, if you will walk into a pub, look at the beer list, say, I'm not having any of that, and leave, you're probably a beer geek.
Do you actually do that?
I've done that on a couple of occasions.
Magnificent.
Much to the disappointment of people I'm with. It doesn't happen much anymore. I've kind of come out the other side of that.
So I would trust your opinion on that. If you walked into a bar and were like, all of this is shit, I would probably go, he's probably right.
I think
it's
probably come about more from doing sales for the brewery. I know there's there's a handful of breweries that sell cheap in volume. So if a bar's got some of them on, you kind of think, yeah, they're not paying good money for decent beer here. It's probably all rubbish. So.
Right, shit. And you wouldn't do that with your brewery?
No. Well, we aren't particularly expensive, but we're weird enough that people only tend to stumble across us by accident. So.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I drink your stuff at a beer festival, regardless of whether or not you're there.
Cheers.
For the benefit of the people listening in, we've known each other since we were 5.
Yeah.
That makes it what?
30-something years, isn't it?
7 years?
Jesus. Yeah, something like that.
Fuck. And we were in the same class at school, and I don't know whether you'd have predicted celebrants and brewery.
No, probably not.
Either of us, really?
No, seems unlikely, doesn't it?
No, but here we are. We both had very different but interesting journeys, stayed in touch, and now we're talking about beer.
Excellent.
On a podcast. That one I probably could have predicted.
Yes, yeah, that's entirely predictable, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the big questions. What was your first encounter with craft beer? I'm not talking like your first pint of shit lager. I'm talking actually getting into craft beer.
Yeah, beer would be Stubby's on holiday in France, probably, I imagine. Same as a lot of people.
Well, you and I drank Duvel way before anyone had heard of it. Underage in Belgium, I want to say.
Some messy evenings there, aren't there?
Yeah, fucking hell. There's photographic
there is actually.
Our underage drinking somewhere.
Excellent. The first beer I remember trying and thinking, like, wow, that is actually amazing, was when we first moved to Manchester, which would have been about 16 years ago, something like that. And we lived right by the Marble Arch in, I think it's called the Green Quarter now, is it?
Yeah, it's probably the
Green
Northern
Quarter.
Quarter
It's the grotty bit at the edge of town at that time.
But it's not so grotty.
No, it's quite nice now.
Yeah.
We've had a history of doing that, moving places, and then as soon as we leave, amazing things open around the corner.
I mean, I'm not going to...
Yeah. I don't think they're directly related, those two things. But our old flat in Manchester, there's now a really good pub literally next door and 3 brewery taps within about 100 metres.
Fuck's sake.
And there wasn't even a shop when we lived there.
No.
So,
you had a nice flat though.
It was quite a nice flat.
It was 2 minutes walk from actual city centre Manchester.
Yeah, no, it was.
But we were like, I would describe it as a derelict belt.
Yeah, yes, it did. which now is the Green Quarter.
Yes, exactly that. God, we're old talking about Manchester 15 years ago.
But anyway, the bit with Marble Arch just around the corner, kind of brewery tap for Marble Brewery, who still are the best brewery in Manchester. Much as I get shouted down frequently when I say that to people. The first beer that really took me by surprise, they did it. They brewed it again recently, but it was just called Ginger. But back then they used quite a lot of fairly fierce ginger root in it, and it was, I don't know, it had a kind of dandelion and burdock sort of thing, but quite a serious ginger burn to it.
The same level as perhaps a ginger beer, or
like probably like a Fentimans type ginger beer.
Brilliant.
And then, but in a bitter. They brewed it again recently, and it was still nice, but it wasn't as gingery. But I remember drinking that and thinking, and that was the first time I'd had a beer that wasn't a lager or like an old man bitter. And I was like, oh wow, there's different stuff out there. And then I think on the back of that, I probably started seeking out other things. Probably like just stuff in the supermarket. Badger ales, I don't know if they still exist.
I remember Badger.
Might do. I think they probably do. But they did something with ginger in as well, which I used to drink quite a lot.
Yeah, I think supermarket access around the time you're talking became a little bit more of a thing. I remember buying Old Tom around that time in supermarkets.
Yeah. The crazy amount of beer in supermarkets now, but it's just kind of starting to go beyond slabs of Carling at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know?
Still the best-selling beer in the UK, depressingly.
I know, right? And I think there is almost an acknowledgement that the term geek, whilst 90% positive, does involve a little bit of snobbery. You are into something so much that perhaps if you don't control yourself, you can be a bit of a gatekeeper. You
Yeah,
can be a
yeah,
bit of a
absolutely,
snob.
yeah.
And I absolutely turn my nose up at shite lager. Good lager, I'm happy with a good lager if I'm in the mood for a lager. But Carling, Foster's,
Yeah.
Carlsberg, Heineken, the basic ones, the export stuff, I'll drink.
Yeah, but there is some decent stuff. There's more and more German lager coming in. Weirdly, since Brexit, I don't understand how that's happening, but I assume whoever's importing it is importing it now in massive volumes to make it cost effective. But there is some very good lager out there.
I remember going through a period of drinking Lech for the simple reason they sponsored the Speedway, and I liked the Speedway.
Fair enough.
So I tried it. It's a Polish brand that's, Speedway is gigantic in Poland.
Yeah.
And this Polish brand sponsored the whole Speedway Grand Prix because it's big enough in Poland, even though they weren't really exporting. And then as soon as I got to try it, I was looking for it for years. And I was like, it's going to be shit. And it was actually all right.
I don't think I've ever tried it.
LECH.
I can picture what the bottles look like.
Yeah, it's a medium strength, perfectly acceptable, but not particularly exciting lager.
Fair enough.
And
that is most of the beer in the world is exactly that.
Fucking Carling.
Well, yes.
And for me, I think I'm going to expose myself even more as the kind of like lower level geek compared to you. I'm going to tell you a story about Eccles in Manchester.
Go on.
You probably even remember my friend Ninja Rich.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, he lived in Eccles at the time, and we were both incredibly hapless when it came to, in my case, men, in his case, women. And every time we got upset or dumped or whatever, we would meet in Eccles Town Centre to whine, basically. Not drink wine, but moan.
Wine with an H.
Yeah, and there wasn't much going on in Eccles Town Centre. The best pub was, unfortunately, a Wetherspoons called The Cross. And they always had a guest ale. Just one on cask. And it was, more often than not, it was Abbot Ale. But occasionally it was something else. And it was always £1.10.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think this is about 20 years ago. So it was £1.10 for a pint of ale. And I think, is Abbot Ale still going?
As far as I know, yeah.
Does that count as a craft beer?
They'd probably describe it as a craft beer.
I think at the time, it was more...
It's a perfectly nice beer, definitely.
Yeah, I think at the time it would have been more of a craft beer.
Yeah, I remember drinking that fairly often at the time as well.
So we were always on the Abbot Ale for £1.10, and you'd go out with a tenner. You'd buy 3 rounds of 2 beers, and because we were both walking in, you could have a pizza on the way home, and you'd have change from a tenner. So we'd newer do it on a weekend. We'd always do it on a weekday. We'd sit there and get leathered and turn up to work the next day hanging on £6.60 worth of beer.
Fantastic.
But I think my taste has become a little more sophisticated than whatever the fuck Wetherspoons could get for the absolute cheapest. But I do think it can.
Oh, yeah. Wetherspoons do get some decent beer. It kind of depends a little bit on where you are. And
have you ever supplied Wetherspoons?
No, you have to lower your prices to a point where it's not really worth bothering. Right. Unfortunately,
that's what I kind of assumed.
I think
if you're doing with Abbot Ale,
if you're really churning it out in huge volumes, you can probably make it work financially, I imagine, but not on a little brewery scale, really.
Right. I mean, you're not a microbrewery; you're a medium-sized brewery. Well, what kind of?
I can't remember what the definition of a microbrewery are. We probably are. You don't really hear that term used much anymore. No. Everyone likes to call everything craft, don't they? So.
Is microbrewery almost a rude term now?
It's probably more old-fashioned. It's probably more associated with real ale and camera and that sort of old geezers in sandals and that sort of thing.
In my head, microbrewery kind of envisions a tiny little brewery attached to a pub, and they make their own beer.
There's the term nano brewery has come into being in the last few years, which is usually a bloke in his shed. But
you were bloke in your shed once.
I was. Yeah, there are some very good nano brewers. There's some people making just astonishingly good beer on tiny bits of kit in their house. But...
Right. So, what is it about craft beer that appeals to you, that this is your thing and you're more into it than, let's say, football or a certain television program? What is it about craft beer that got you where you are?
I think from the brewing point of view, it's kind of the satisfaction of being able to be in control of everything. You can choose exactly what goes into it, whatever the grain, the hops, the yeast, what temperature you ferment things at. There's just so many things you can control, and as you keep doing it, keep getting better at it, you can predict exactly what that's going to translate to into the end beer. It's kind of like cooking on a very slow scale, I suppose, but there's something satisfying about knowing that you drink a beer you brewed and it's got certain flavours in it, and you know exactly why they're there, and they're there because you've done this, that, and other like 2 weeks earlier. There's just something quite satisfying about that, which is probably why I ended up quitting the day job and doing that instead, because that was deeply unsatisfying, translating whatever that was, health and safety documents about CO2 leaks, which...
I mean, you were a very talented translator.
I'm sure I was fine, but yeah, it wasn't much fun, that. Really.
Well, I quit the day job to run my own business too, and it's not easy.
No, definitely
but
not.
I'm so much happier. I feel so much freer now. I'm not working for the man, My boss lets me have whatever days off I want,
Nice. It is that. It's the freedom, and it's just being in control of things a bit more than clocking in 9 to 5, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think the idea of not getting hammered if you don't want to, and savouring the flavour and being you get the image of the kind of TV critics sniffing the wine and going, "Oh, smell of hollyhocks." But there is some real pleasure in that, and that's why I don't just want to drink Carling.
Yeah.
I want an experience, and as I've got older, I'm not fond of hangovers.
Yeah.
But the social element of going out is something I think I'll always want. But while, if I end up going out with someone who's half my age, they will probably want 10 pints of lager. And I'll sip 5 pints of craft ale, get just as drunk, and I'll have had a much better taste experience.
Yeah. I do know what you mean. It kind of varies depending on where you're going. We'll have nights out when we're going to just 1 or 2 of the local pubs and drinking pints of mild all night.
I love a pint of mild.
Oh, I'd love a pint of mild.
I heard a story from an old timer who used to run a pub, who comes into a pub that I go into.
Right.
And he was telling me that he would just get the drip trays and pour it back into the mild 20 or 30 years ago.
That used to be a thing. There still are pubs in the UK where the drip tray feeds back into the cask. That is actually a thing, which is pretty appalling, really. But
the thing is,
I can't think what it's called. It's got a name.
If it's all the drip trays, you're mixing wheat beer with porters, with lager, with
I hadn't even thought of that. I've always assumed.
What the fuck does it actually make other than a mess?
Yeah, you wonder why so many people like mild if that was the case at some point.
But proper mild that isn't that I like. But I don't think I'd want that mild.
No, drip tray slurry mild is not what anyone wants, really.
Do you feel that now you're in the business, now you are a brewer, have you lost anything from going to the pub or going to a festival? Or can you still turn up and savour and enjoy like the way I'm describing?
You probably get slightly jaded after a while, I suppose. But the festivals I still love going to, where it's nice. You kind of go in, see your beer, check it's tasting all right, but then just forget about it and become a normal punter, same as everyone else, really, and just wander around picking what sounds interesting. Because
you don't serve your own beers unless you have your own stall, right? So you just turn up with some casks, give them to the volunteers.
Yeah, and then it's in their hands, which is, that's a mixed bag. We've been to beer festivals where we've heard someone ordering our beer and then a volunteer saying, "Ooh, I don't know if you want that."
Really?
Jesus. Yeah, it's nearly always with smoked beer and old gits who don't understand what it is. But
wow.
It's mildly annoying when you see things like that. But for the most part, volunteers at beer festivals are fairly knowledgeable, and it's quite a nice environment, isn't it?
Yeah. But you aren't big enough to have your own stall, or do you just not want it?
We don't really want the work, to be perfectly honest. we will sometimes turn down events because we're just like, that's so much hard work. Just don't want to do it.
Yeah. So I'm going to split the next question into two. What is your favourite beer that you've created at Torrside? Okay. And what is your favourite beer that someone else has created? So let's go with Torrside first.
That's a tricky one. We did recently count how many beers we'd done. It was about 130 something, I think. I think the favourite thing we brew is that this is something we really should have looked into by now, but I don't know how to pronounce the beer style still.
Brilliant.
Grodzki, something like that. It's a Polish beer style. It's a low ABV wheat beer brewed with oak smoked wheat.
That sounds good.
So ours is 2.8%, really, really sparkling, really pale, really clear, and it's just the kind of thing you can have in the fridge. You just come in, particularly in summer, come in on hot weather, and you can just drink pint after pint of it, and it's just delicious.
What's it called?
Stolat.
Stolat.
We brew it every now and then, as you can imagine from the description. It's not an easy sell. No. So we brew it every now and then we drink most of it. To be honest, that's what usually happens. So.
Is that actually something that could end up being an issue for you? Is that you brew shit that you like, no one else wants it, and you drink the profits?
Generally, when we're brewing weirder stuff, we'll tend to make it stuff that'll last well. Because smoking beer doesn't fade at all. Hoppy flavours in kind of IPAs and stuff tend to fade fairly quickly, but smoke and the kind of roastiness in dark malts and things like that will just stay on and on for some of them. We know our beer Stolat is fine several years later.
Brilliant.
Despite only being 2%.
Brilliant.
Just because it's all about the smoke and not the hops.
I mean, for me, I'm a massive fan of anything that is black as the darkest night. So the ones I'm always going to pick are essentially porters or stouts.
Sure, yeah.
And the candle wick that you do, which is kind of like, it's one you kind of keep almost consistently,
it's almost a core beer, that.
And I love that. Yeah. I love that. That's just great.
That is easily our best-selling dark beer. We're one of the local bars is trying to get us to brew it often enough so they can have it on permanently. So.
Oh, you should do it. What
Well, they've already got 2 of our beers on permanently, so yeah, they're looking at a 3rd. So.
Amazing. But I think the one I'm going to pick, and I can't remember its damn name, but it was the inevitable chocolatey porter one that was weird and really nice.
Ooh, what would that have been?
It was quite strong, and it was about 6 or 8 months ago.
It could well have... Was it Grubby Bastard?
Grubby Bastard! Yeah. How did I forget that name?
that is one of our most popular beers as well.
Grubby Bastard. And I know damn well how you named that beer because it's something that your long-term partner would say.
Yeah, that tied into it. The first time we brewed it with Grub, the street food vendor in Manchester.
Oh.
They just said, do you want to brew a beer? We'd brew some big chocolatey Grubby Bastard type thing. And we're like, yep.
That's what it's called.
That's almost exactly what the style description says as well. It says big chocolatey wintry porter type of thing.
That was it.
On the label.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
It has worked quite well.
Is that ever going to come back?
Yeah, we've only just run out of stock of it now. We brew it once a year for it's as closest we get to a Christmas beer, basically.
Okay.
It's a weird one because if we just brewed a smoked porter, people wouldn't buy it, but because we've given it a silly name, it flies out.
Yeah.
People come in and buy it. Oh, Bob, he's a grubby bastard. Let's get him one of those.
Yeah, you did a dunkel as well that I liked.
Oh, yeah.
What was that called?
Oh, God. That's a good question.
I love a dunkel.
I can't remember what that was called. Yeah, we did do a dunkel,
yeah. Yeah, your dunkel was... But again, I've ignored all your other ones that you can see through. If you definitely can't see through it, that's what I want. And there was another one that you did, and it was really... I had it at a beer festival. Wasn't it like a biscuit one?
Oh, we did a Viennese World.
Viennese World? And it really tasted
that worked quite well, that. Yeah. It was a collaboration with a Welsh brewery.
That was amazing. Is that coming back?
That's one of the beers we get requested for most, but we've no plans to rebrew that now.
Boo. Boo.
You never know.
I'm sure our many fan will harangue you. And
every beer we get requested for a rebrew, it's always something obscure and stupid that was a nightmare to brew. And we're like,
was it
we're never
difficult, that one?
I don't remember it being that difficult. It involved quite a lot of fruit puree that is always messy, but not difficult. Just or people come up to us asking, "When are you going to brew this again?" And we're like, "Brew what?
Brew what?"
And then they have to tell us what beer style it was. Oh yeah, we did brew that, didn't we? No, we're not brewing that again.
So you're not doing the dunkel for me either because you can't remember its name.
Was it Borderlines? Was it
Borderlines?
We did a smoked dunkel. It was kind of between a smoked porter and a dunkel lager
Very
type
nice.
thing, wasn't it?
Very,
we
very
might.
nice.
I've got a feeling that might have been an accident. every now and then beers are, because we brew in a way where we sometimes brew a strong beer and a weaker beer from the same batch of ingredients.
Yeah, didn't you do that with Candlewick?
Yeah, we always brew an imperial version of that at the same time. But sometimes the second beer behaves slightly unpredictably. So we sometimes end up with things that we're not entirely confident we could do again.
Amazing.
We could brew something similar. We may well.
Amazing. So, someone else's brewery, what's your favourite craft beer that's ever been created?
It's probably where we're stretching the definition of craft to, but my favourite beer is Orval, which is one of the 6 Trappist breweries in Belgium.
It's foreign, it counts.
There you go. it is pretty crafty because it's essentially a Belgian IPA.
Okay.
It's a 6% quite hoppy beer.
That's strong.
But they brew it with a type of yeast called Brettanomyces that over time kind of develops other flavours. So you get a bottle of Orval, if it's fresh it tastes quite hoppy.
Right.
Then 6 months later it's starting to get a little bit tart, and you can age it for years and years and years, and kind of every different age of Orval tastes different.
Wow, and it's supposed to do that?
Yeah, and it's always the same, and the monks, I don't know how they control it that well, but it's like a mass market beer available in supermarkets, and it's just there's no real equivalent of it anywhere. I love it to the point my current tattoo is based on the Orval logo.
You idiot. I mean,
Yeah.
says the guy with tattoos of video games.
Well, yeah.
Animals with a nice face. And up to and including cheese. I have a tattoo about cheese.
Excellent.
So no, I can't judge you. And yes, there's going to be an episode of this podcast on tattoos.
Superb. That's an entire world of geekery tattoos,
Isn't it?
You can lose yourself very quickly.
Yep. And you and I were quite late with our tattoos, really. Weren't
Definitely.
we?
Yeah.
I think I was late 30s. You were
Like
in your 40s,
literally
weren't
last
you?
year.
Yeah. But going back to what we're supposed to be talking about,
Yeah.
I'm going to be a basic bitch, and I don't care because it's really, really nice.
Go for it.
I really like Tiny Rebel Stay Puffed.
Oh, I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
That's just like marshmallow and beer you can't see through, Chris.
I know. That's probably one of my pet hates in the current beer world. They've acquired the name pastry stouts, which is just
I didn't know that.
Oh
Pastry
no!
stouts.
Oh god, I've given you a new term.
Oh, I need my pastry stout.
Basically,
more in my
any
life.
stout that's got some kind of sugary additive that shouldn't be there.
Oh, I had one the other day.
There's a lot of them around.
It was from Pomona Brewery. It was a coconut stout that was 11%.
Oh, that sounds quite nice. I
That was
can live with
fucking
coconut.
lovely. They've done another one that's a maple stout, 11%. I think they're doing a series of these crazy ass stouts.
Nice. I do like Pomona. They're a good brewery. Though.
Yeah, and I know Stay Puffed makes me a basic bitch. I might as well have picked Brewdog, but I don't care. It's nice.
They sell absolutely tons of it, so it's got to be popular. And I just find there's something with when dark beers are above a certain sweetness, you kind of drink it and I can feel it in my teeth, and I think I don't want to be feeling beer in my teeth. That's too much.
That's what I want.
Beer that tastes like sweeties.
I mean, but it's dark beer that tastes like.
It's increasingly a big chunk of the beer world in the UK.
I think Stay Puft was probably one of the first as well.
It probably was, yeah. The really widely available ones, anyway.
Yeah. So, what would you say is the most obscure fact that you know about craft beer?
I was thinking for ages about this. All the obscure facts I know are deeply boring, so I've rejected most of things that involve like beer duty thresholds. It's like no one wants to hear about that. One of my favourite beer facts is just not so much a fact, even just how recently beer became kind of an industrial process, because beer's been brewed. There's evidence of beer being brewed, I think, over 5,000 years now.
Amazing.
Going back crazy time to like Sumerian peoples. Sumerian peoples?
Sumerians.
Sumerians, yes.
People what lived a long time ago.
Yeah.
We know about craft beer. We don't know about like ancient history. That's not a geekery I'm into.
No, that's a different episode, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's never happening.
It's never an episode
about it.
There's not going to be a Sumerian episode.
Sorry, guys.
Disgraceful. But it wasn't until kind of mid 1800s that science advanced to the point to identify that it was yeast that actually produced alcohol in beer. Or presumably another.
So beer wasn't originally alcoholic?
No, it was always alcoholic. No one knew why particularly. So in the Middle Ages, every house would be making their own beer, and they'd make it with what they said was a magic stick. Each house had a magic stick. If you stirred the beer with the magic stick, it became alcoholic. Which, in retrospect,
Fantastic.
There was wild yeast on the magic stick, obviously. But
so it was true.
Yes,
the magic stick was magic.
It was a kind of magic, I suppose. Yeah. So it wasn't until like mid 1800s Louis Pasteur kind of did the research to show no, yeast is doing this. This is how it works.
Good grief.
Which, I mean, German lager breweries date back way beyond that, I think. So they must have been. They must have had an inkling, you'd have thought. But
Das Stick Magic.
Nice.
That's not what German for
no,
magic
it probably
is.
isn't.
The Das bit. See what I did there?
Yeah, very good.
Right. This I think this podcast is going to expose my utter ignorance of everything that isn't something that I quite like. I genuinely couldn't tell you any words other than Ein, zwei, drei, vier in German, and that's because of Rammstein.
Yeah, my German knowledge is limited to Rammstein lyrics.
Yeah.
And beer styles. That's basically it.
Well, good point. Good point. And for me, I think this is a bit dull. The magic stick story does trump it, but what the fuck? I learnt this on a tour of the Hyde's Brewery donkeys years ago. And in fact, I think even relatively recently, you marketed your beers as vegan friendly.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
But beer, which is made of fucking plant, was not vegan friendly or veggie friendly for quite a long time because they used fish guts as a strainer.
Large quantities of it still isn't. Most mainstream large breweries still use the swim bladder of a sturgeon fish, I think it is.
Right, but I didn't know that much. I just knew it was fish guts.
I mean, technically, the fish guts should... It clears the beer by clinging to protein and then dropping out, so there should never be any trace of it in your beer. If it's getting into your beer, something very wrong has happened.
Still a bit minging for your vegan.
It's just unnecessary. In the early years, we did get some beers returned because they weren't clear enough, but we just didn't want to put nasty shit in our beer. There are other alternatives. There's silica based stuff, or I think that there's a few plant-based vegan alternatives now.
If they can make fucking chicken McNuggets that taste like actual chicken nuggets, then you can find an alternative to the inside of a sturgeon.
We've just always kind of a low intervention approach. We don't if stuff doesn't need adding to our beer, we don't want to add it. Basically,
right? Full
stop. Whatever it is. So
it just seems
we'll live with hazy beer. That's fine.
It just seems like the oddest thing that. Up until relatively recently, it was quite borderline impossible to get beer that wasn't vegan friendly.
Yeah, probably until the last 10 years or so. Yeah.
I remember. Yeah,
most small craft breweries will be vegan these days, I would have thought. So, some of the pastry stouts often aren't because they've got lactose in it.
Wow. Do you think that there should be like a warning for vegans on things? It seems to me like I would assume that beer was vegan.
I think people are often surprised to learn that. Definitely. Yeah. Because it should be vegan, obviously, shouldn't it?
I mean, thankfully, I'm veggie and I'm not arsed, but I prefer it to be vegan. I think.
Yeah. Well, just not using unnecessary products, isn't it?
Yeah.
But. Yeah.
So where would you say would be a good place to start for a beginner coming into craft beer? Imagine someone who's only drunk lager and cider.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I'd probably recommend that there's a handful of breweries in the UK that brew kind of really clean, accessible versions of a huge range of beer styles. So the pick of the bunch of Thornbridge in Bakewell, who have been, I don't know how long they've been brewing now, must be about 20 years-ish.
Right.
But they brew a huge range of beer styles, and all of them are just nailed, all really clean, crisp, as it should taste.
Like a gentle introduction.
Yeah, I mean, they're all very good. They're one of my favourite breweries. So I still drink their beer all the time, but they're a good introduction if the kind of beer styles, words you're not familiar with. If you try a Thornbridge version of it, that will show you what it should taste like, and then kind of build outwards from there. They do quite a good monthly subscription service that always has a weird and wonderful range of good stuff in there.
I was going to ask what your opinion on beer subscription services is.
They do vary significantly, I think.
There's a major one, I can't remember its name.
Beer 52's
that's
the
one.
big one, isn't it?
I subscribed to it once, and they used Hermes. And if any company uses Hermes, this is one of my rants, but if any company uses the delivery service of Hermes, I immediately cancel and tell them why. And I remember very, very vividly that one company got back in touch and said, we've switched to Royal Mail, so I resubbed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Beer 52 wasn't that company, so I did have a go, and it was good, and I liked what they sent me, but I just won't deal with Hermes. And that delivery itself, I had a problem with. And literally every delivery I've ever had from Hermes, I'm not exaggerating, has been wretched.
You're entirely at the mercy of what your local driver's like. Our Hermes driver is very good, so we're quite lucky. We have exactly the same response to anyone delivering through APC.
Right.
Because our local APC guys are more...
I've just moved to 2 or 3 different houses and lived in 3 or 4, and it's always been shit with Hermes. But I kind of like the idea of it. But you think that which would you recommend then as a?
I've only used 1 or 2. The Thornbridge one is very good, although it will all be from the same brewery, obviously. I know people who rave about Beer 52. I've never actually tried it. My dad did it for a while. He seemed to like it, and he's super fussy. So that
do you not do your own?
We did talk about it briefly. Our kind of supply and demand is so erratic, you're never entirely confident you're going to be able to do enough different beers to fill it every month.
Right.
Some months we'd do it very easily, and other months we might just have had a couple of big wholesale orders and we're suddenly out of stock of several lines. So
right.
We've talked about maybe doing an imperial version of it, possibly, but that's quite demanding as well. So.
Imperial just means strong as fuck,
yeah,
right?
Basically, yeah. Tends to be 8% plus in our book.
Yeah, because I've had your Imperial Stout. It didn't do me any good. It tasted lovely.
It's quite easy drinking our strong stuff. Yes, yeah. It will do that.
I had a bad morning. But I think in a more general kind of way, I would say that to some extent I started on Abbot Ale, which is quite close to bitter, and that I don't even know what that is. Is it a bitter? What is it?
Probably is just classed as a normal bitter, I imagine.
Yeah, and then some. So I almost feel like there's like a move from that to IPAs, and then go on to more interesting like stouts and porters and sours. I still can't get on with sours.
I can get on with some. I don't kind of. There's different types of sours. There's kind of quite simple sours where I won't go into too much detail. It's kind of boring, but there's kind of real quick sours, I suppose, that you brew with not a very involved process. You just let the beer sour and release it pretty much. And then there's more involved sours that are mixed fermentation things that have often been aged for years and can be quite interesting. There are some breweries in the UK doing that these days. Abbeydale do some very good stuff like that in Sheffield. Right.
I didn't know that. I just thought it was beer that tasted weird.
There's a huge range. A lot of it, the more basic ones will have that kind of probably get you in your saliva glands sort of thing that you don't necessarily want on a night out. But there are good ones out there, definitely. Pastry sours have become a thing recently.
Pastry? You're going to have to further elaborate on this term pastry. Is it derogatory?
I would use it in a derogatory way, but plenty of breweries will put it on their own branding. So not necessarily.
What does it actually
It usually means it's got probably lactose in it.
Right.
And various other extra sweety flavoured ingredients as a rule. Lactose doesn't ferment is the key thing with that. So whereas not ordinarily in beer, the sugar is fermented by yeast, turns it into alcohol.
Right.
But lactose doesn't ferment. Well, most yeasts won't ferment lactose, so you end up with all that sweetness is still in the finished beer. It gives it loads of extra body and makes it kind of thick and rich and kind of like hot chocolate, basically.
That works for me.
Yeah, no, it's a popular thing to do. But recently, pastry sours have started to emerge, which is kind of a sour beer, and then they've added sweetness back with lactose.
That makes sense.
It's alcopops, basically.
I mean, alcopops kind of wildly go in popularity and then dip after there's some kind of controversy, and then they come back in again.
Yeah, no, I know. We consumed a lot of alcopops during student years, I think.
Yeah. Fuck. I'm kind of glad that I've had the full range of booze over the years.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty much sure that I'm settled for the rest of my life on beer that is black as the night.
Fair enough. That's a good place to be.
Because I don't really drink anywhere near as much as I used to. So when I do drink, I want to drink something I really want to drink.
Yeah, you want to be like in your 60s, 70s old dude going to the local pub having a pint of stout. Just
with my camera card for my 20% off and all that shit.
Nice.
Yeah. But I think that's where I've landed. As you get older, you kind of realise what's going to stay and what might change.
You start to filter stuff out, don't you, after a certain point.
So the shitty question, frankly, is there anything that you're unhappy with in the craft beer world? Like, the examples I've given are like, I don't know, Harry Potter's writer is a fucking turf. There's a toxic fandom in professional wrestling and anything like that. Is there anything that you can think of that you would change or you don't like about the craft beer?
There's been a lot of... there was kind of... keep seeing it described as like a craft beer Me Too movement last year where...
Yeah. that was what I had in my notes.
Yeah, there was a whole load of people posting on a big long thread on Instagram. It started there was one in America. We're calling out all sorts of... It was mostly men being sleazy with female staff for the most part. But then there was an English version where a couple of breweries did come off pretty badly there.
Well, it was mostly Brewdog, wasn't it?
They were a big part of it. The documentary that was out a couple of weeks ago is worth watching if you want to track it down. It was only on BBC Scotland for some reason, but it is on iPlayer, I think.
Right.
It was fairly damning that.
About Brewdog?
Yeah, mostly just about the boss of Brewdog, but yeah, generally their culture. I mean, aside from most of it was just sleaze-based stuff, but
what's really frustrating is that Brewdog is almost like an iconic brand that got so big that it wasn't really craft anymore, but it was craft for such a long time. It was the inspiration for so much. Yeah, and it was supposed to be fucking punk rock.
Yeah,
and it's not punk rock. It's bastard.
I think
punk.
I think
Sorry.
They did kind of open up the craft beer industry in the UK. They did a huge amount of good. I think they employ loads of wonderful people. It's just the management, I think, are the problem, unfortunately. But yeah, they do seem to be fair. Well, not even they. It's the one chap, I think.
And that's really fucking sad. It's someone who just really loved beer, got into it, got carried away, became a sleaze bag, and it's just something that happens so much. When you go from being a fan to getting involved, to getting too involved, to becoming a bastard.
Yeah, getting carried away by your own hype.
Yeah, and it's fucking sad, and it's just the fucking shame that it happened in something that I like, and I don't know. But
the undercurrent of that is just the gender balance in beer is massively male across the board. I can't...
You see that at beer festivals.
You do.
1 in 10 is girls.
Yeah. I can't think what the actual percentage is. The number of women working in beer in this country, like in breweries, is single figures, I think. So,
wow.
Which is pretty dismal, really.
Does it have the same problems with representation for other minority groups?
Yeah. Cloudwater in Manchester did a series of beers last year where they teamed up with breweries representing various minority groups, which is a great thing. It was in Tesco, got loads of coverage for
brilliant
for breweries who most people would absolutely never have heard of otherwise. Right. But they I keep seeing kind of snide comments on social media about that, about being overly woke and all that
Oh,
kind
for
of
goodness sake.
bollocks. But yeah,
Do you feel that craft beer has a toxic fandom then?
there's an element of it. There's a weird kind of crossover between people who use the term craft and then the certain elements, the older generation real ale types who don't really get along.
Right.
We never used the word craft at all in relation to our brewery.
What would you describe it as then?
Just beer, pretty much. I mean, everything we brew is real ale, so we do appeal to camera in some ways, but then we'll release like red wine, barrel-aged cherry blondes and stuff like that. And
Sounds lovely.
which kind of goes the other way. So we try and kind of tread a line down the middle, but yeah, there's angry people everywhere, aren't there, really?
There is.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and obviously I know more about the fandom of wrestling and the people in wrestling and everything that I saw in the craft beer industry and the anger and the abuse was something I'd seen in wrestling highlighted only 6 months before.
I think it repeats itself in
And
most
it's
circles,
important,
unfortunately, doesn't it?
but it's fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah.
Boo. Do you want a beer?
Why the hell not?
All right, it is quiz time, Chris. So the idea is I come up with 3 fiendish questions for you because you are the expert. And you come up with 3 medium level questions for me. So we've got an equal playing field and it's a fair competition.
Sure.
So would you like me to ask the questions first or would you like to ask your questions first?
I think you can go first.
All right. Question number 1. Which brewery's current beers include Phaedra, Clarky Cat, and Such a Nice Monster?
Ooh.
Phaedra spelt Phaedra.
I'm sure I've heard of that. Is that Pomona?
1 point for
Yay.
Chris.
Yes, no, I have seen that on draft somewhere.
Pomona based in Manchester, aren't they?
Yes, they're. I think they're possibly technically in Salford, aren't they? But they are a good brewery, Pomona. They've given us free stuff along the way as well, which is always nice.
I quite like free stuff.
Everyone likes free stuff.
Yeah. So, this one, having the knowledge that you've just watched a documentary on it, is perhaps a little easier than I intended it to be.
Go on.
Question number 2, name the founders of Brewdog.
James Watt and Martin Dickey.
Absolutely right. 2 points for Chris.
We used to go to Bakewell Farmers Market every now and then when Thornbridge had just set up. Martin Dickey was their first head brewer, I believe.
Right.
But he would be there on the market stall selling bottles of Jaipur brewed down the road in Bakewell. It's mad how quick they've got as big as they have.
And
He seemed quite nice, to be fair.
I haven't really drunk much Brewdog since all that shit came out.
Yeah.
And it was a conscious choice. I really liked, and like I said, I don't really drink lager, but I really liked their Lost Lager.
I've still not tried that, actually.
And the ethicalness of it being zero balanced, no dead tree. This is probably a nicer way of putting it. No dead trees. They plant a tree for every beer they brew and shit. That really appealed to me. From an ethical point of view, I'm a vegetarian for planetary reasons rather than animals. And that really did appeal to me, that, you know, an eco-balanced
Yeah, no,
beer.
it's a nice idea.
And I bought it for that reason, and it was good, so I bought it again. And then the motherfuckers turn out to be abusive bastards, and any good that beer, you know, just ugh.
Hate to say it, but a good chunk of that documentary is about the forest scheme not being what it seems as well, unfortunately.
Oh, shit me.
Yeah, I can't remember what the details were now. I think they applied for a government grant to fund the forest afterwards or something like that.
Wow.
There's some fairly bad things going on behind the scenes there.
Wow.
Plenty of their bars are still very nice places. They're run by good people. The one out by Manchester Academy is a very nice bar.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the really difficult conundrum. Like, when the guy who owns Wetherspoons was a massive bastard to his staff
he's awful.
over COVID, and like said, get a job in Tesco, and you know, he's a Brexit voter, and all the other horrible things that are the antithesis of how I see being a good person is. He is a bastard. But how do you stick it to him? Because I haven't been in a Wetherspoons pub since, and in my head I don't want to. But is that sticking it to him, or is it further risking the jobs of the people that he employs that he's treated badly?
It is, exactly that. And that's the sad thing about the Brewdog thing, of people end up boycotting Brewdog, but they're affecting all the really, really genuinely nice people who work there.
Yeah, and it's just an impossible situation.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
But hey, I didn't expect that to be a grim question.
No, sorry.
I'm clearly more angry about that than I realise. And I just get angry about stuff these days. I'm old. And
just an angry stout drinker.
I am, but I'm angry about the right things. I'm not angry in a cunty way. Anyway, question number 3. What historic anniversary did Camera's Great British Beer Festival celebrate in 2017?
Ooh.
Do you remember before there was a plague?
Yeah, I feel like I probably should know that. What might that be?
Historic anniversary, their Camera's Great British Beer Festival.
Was it the 50th, was it?
It was the 40th. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's not too bad, is it? No.
Right, it's my turn. Make them nice.
I think I've made them nice. I've made them guessable. So
okay, good.
So I thought that was reasonable. Okay, go on then. Question 1. 3 essential ingredients needed to make beer, which are grain, yeast, and what else?
Hops.
And I've been a bit mean with that question, to be fair. Water.
Oh, it is water. I'm a fucking idiot.
You use hops in virtually all beer.
Can I have half a point?
Half a point, I think, yeah. Hops are an essential ingredient in all of our beer. So.
I think if you'd have said water, grain, and I'd have got yeast, or water, yeast, and I'd have got grain.
The four are there's German brewers have to abide by purity laws. They're only allowed to use those 4 ingredients. That's why you don't get no pastry stouts in Germany. You probably do these days. There's probably some renegade breweries brewing all sorts of wacky shit underground.
Do you consider Torrside to be a renegade brewery?
Probably. I think some might say that because we just deliberately brew what we want and don't really pay it, whether anyone's going to buy it or not.
Maybe go with eccentric rather than renegade.
I think that's probably,
yeah.
Obstinate is probably it's probably the word, yeah. Or the fact that we're one of the only breweries still holding out on bottles and not going to cans.
Good. Good.
I like bottles. I'm sticking with that.
Obstinate. Definitely obstinate.
Well, I think our Twitter, it's either on our website or our Twitter bio, just says something like brewing unfashionable, unseasonal beers since 2015.
Brilliant.
Which sums us up pretty well. Okay, then question 2. List the top 50 countries in the world in terms of beer consumption. Do the following rank higher or lower than the UK?
Go on.
First one, Belgium.
So Belgium is smaller than us, but Belgium is known for its lager. I think their population is so much lower than ours. I think it's actually going to be lower.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Everyone else I tried that out on at the brewery got that wrong. So, nicely done. Second one, Spain.
Spain's much bigger and it's warm. Another country that's into lager, I think. You know, you get like Sol and Cerveza is a thing, isn't it? I'm going to say higher consumption.
Correct again.
I'm just going on populations here.
I'm
not sure that we as British folk are quite the boozy nation that we have the reputation for. Because football hooligans drink a lot of Carling doesn't mean that the rest of the country's like that.
A lot of the football hooligans are also in Spain, aren't they? So,
that's true. They're
drinking Spanish lager.
El Carling.
Yeah, upping their consumption figures.
Yeah.
Best 3 out of 5. This one, Japan.
I have no clue of the population of Japan. I think Japan's little, and I'm going to stereotype the Japanese as being a well-behaved, quite conservative, with a small c, nation, and say that we are higher than Japan.
That is correct again.
Asahi's great lager, though.
You've already got 3 out of 5. We might as well do the other 2. China.
China's just gigantic. It's got like the world's population in it, basically. I'm going to say higher because China's gigantic.
I'd have said higher for that as well. That is lower.
Good grief.
I wonder if just beer's not that big there, possibly. I don't know.
My friend Tom is Chinese and I knew this. Chinese people struggle with alcohol. They have a different...
There's a level of that in Japan as well.
Yeah.
That could be it, just not drinking much volume-wise.
Shit.
And the last one, USA.
USA is gigantic. There are states that probably drink more than us.
I imagine that's probably true. Yeah, they're only just higher. UK is 23rd in the world, just out of interest.
That's pretty big, considering how little
No, I know,
we are.
it is kind of shocking.
There's not like 200 nations.
Number 1's Czech Republic, though, which is also fairly tiny. Just super heavy drinkers.
A lot of Budvar being consumed.
Yeah.
Another great lager.
Budvar is a very good lager. Yeah, I agree.
There are good lagers. Yeah. I just want something that's black as the night.
There's good black lagers. That's not. You don't often see them anymore.
No,
there's a couple of German ones.
What's
You don't see many UK breweries chancing something like that.
Wasn't there a term for dark lager? Wasn't it a dark lager?
Yeah, there's Schwarzbier in German, but basically just means dark lager, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, and there was like a dark lager released by Bass that failed spectacularly.
I really like a dark lager,
and that was so long ago, but they just don't do dark lagers because of it. I think it's called Crusader.
Okay.
And I know this because my dad worked for Bass at the time.
Oh, of course.
Crusader, they launched this dark lager and then didn't tell people what it was, and people tried it and hated it, and then it flopped.
Yeah, something like that might go over okay these days, where crafty drinkers
bring back Crusader
are more into dark lagers.
Yeah.
I think back then, lager drinkers would be like, I want my brand of lager or nothing.
Right, well, I've got 1 point now, so I've not embarrassed myself. I've not embarrassed myself.
And the third one, are the following names of hops, US space shuttles, or both?
Brilliant.
First one, Atlantis.
No, it's a US space shuttle, but is it a hop? I'm going to say it's just a US space shuttle.
Correct.
Good.
Have I got
to get best of 3 again in this?
Yeah, I didn't know that was a space shuttle. Well, that's my poor knowledge, that is. Second one, Galaxy.
I know that's a hop because I've seen it in a pub recently. I don't know if it's a space shuttle, so I'm going to say both.
Just a hop, that one.
Oh, damn it.
Next one, Endeavour.
That's got to be just a space shuttle.
That is both.
Oh, fuck! I've got to get the last 2.
Columbus.
Both.
Just a hop, I'm afraid.
Fuck my life. I'm done.
And the last one, Challenger.
Space shuttle.
Both again.
Oh, for fuck's sake. What is this with the stupid names?
I don't know. I was just
hops?
looking through names of hops. I was like, loads of these sound like space shuttles.
They really do.
Yeah.
So I lost, but I don't care because that was great fun.
Excellent. There were loads more. There's hops called things like Liberty and Pioneer. There's all sorts of things that sound like they could be spacecraft.
Brilliant.
I almost did it on fictional sci-fi spacecraft, but there were so many I just couldn't cope with it.
I love this.
Well, there's not many space shuttles, so it felt manageable.
So I have learned that hops and space shuttles share names today.
There's an overlap.
That's utterly ridiculous and absolutely wonderful. So, Chris, it's been the best time talking about beer, and now I really, really want a beer.
Yeah.
So that would be nice. Maybe we should do that. But tell people where they can find you on the internet. How can they access Torrside Brewery and try your beers?
So the website is www.torrside.co.uk. We only do kind of mixed cases sent out nationwide because we made kind of a conscious decision not to compete with local retailers. So if you only want 1 or 2 of our beers, go to your local bottle shop in and around Manchester, Sheffield or Nottingham, and you'll probably find them. Where else would you find our beers? If you're coming to New Mills, there's a bar called the Shrub Club that is basically our mini kind of unofficial brewery tap. It's got 5 of our beers on permanently.
Amazing.
And we're going to start, after all the COVID drama, start doing brewery tap events again. We do 1 a month during the warmer months. If you go on our Facebook or Twitter site, you should find the dates there somewhere, I would imagine.
What are the Facebook and Twitters?
Facebook is just Torrside, and so is Twitter. And we do have an Instagram account, but I imagine it's Torrside Brewing, possibly.
I don't like Instagram.
I don't like Instagram either.
It's like Twitter on hard mode when you're in your mid-40s, isn't it?
It is. It does seem very difficult to navigate.
I don't like it. The youngsters like it. Like late millennials, early Gen Zers bloody love the Instagram. And the Gen Zers, TikTok. Have you got a brewery TikTok?
No.
Fuck TikTok.
My fellow brewer Nick has threatened to start a TikTok account, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
No. In fact, this podcast is only on Twitter because I can't be arsed.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. That's my social media of choice. I do Facebook just kind of because I have to for the brewing.
Yeah. But again, Facebook is aimed at folks like us, like
late
30s, early 40s, mid 40s, and the rest, isn't it?
That's pretty much our target market, so that's why we use it.
Yep. Cynical world,
but yeah. We've got to function as a business on some level at least.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else you want to mention before we say cheerio?
I think that's about it. If you're anywhere around Manchester and Stockport, keep an eye on Petersgate Tap, pub in Stockport. Regularly do kind of imperial and barrel-aged, absolutely insane takeovers with our beers. They do 3 a year, so it's worth following them too.
I think I went to that once.
Yeah,
and got absolutely wankered.
They're things you don't tend to remember afterwards. They did one a couple of weekends ago with 7 or 8 imperial beers on. They're always good fun, and it's a great pub anyway.
Honestly, I get drunk maybe 4 or 5 times a year, but when I do, I make it count.
Special drunk.
Yeah. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me for another episode of Geek Polymath. Drink some beer, because beer is great. But until next time, you just enjoy what the fuck you like. Geek Polymath is a podcast brought to you by the We Make This Podcast Network. You can follow the show on Twitter at Geek Polymath. The show's creator and host is me, Mark Adams. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MarkAdamsHC. The show's logo was created by Carl Bryan, and the theme tune was composed and performed by Colin Jackson Brown. Thank you for listening to Geek Polymath.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
The TARDIS crew. a Doctor Who podcast.
Half of your audience punches the air and goes, yeah, he's going to do it. And the other half goes, that pretentious moron. I'm going to go with Ghostlight. It has to be Ghostlight. Ghostlight is the episode of the Cartman McCoy era that like most embodies absolutely everything that I love about this era to death.
Yeah, it's a big story and it's a bit of a decisive as well. Yeah, is it brilliant? Is it pretentious? Is it both? I mean, that's what I love about Ghostlight.
Does it make any sense? Like, that's the question.
I genuinely did not expect that answer. So I thought you were just going to be really normie and go Remembrance or Fenric or something. And then I hear Ghostlight, I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly probably the most unique story of the era.
Pick a disc.
From a sort of Japanese perspective, he has sort of what you would consider in America as like almost like an Old West vibe. It's not, one-to-one because Old West is kind of hokey, but it's all of these musical styles like enka and like piano jazz, like piano bar, piano lounge jazz, that are sort of reminiscent of like gangsters or like old-timey Yakuza or old politician types. And so it kind of like evokes that vibe. And if you watch any amount of Japanese film that wants to be overt about, its characters, you'll kind of see those themes like reappearing.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
This does have another one of my favourite lines. And I'm pretty sure you can both guess what it is. You want to squeeze my buttocks together to make one juicy giant peach. And I have never been brave enough to squeeze anyone's buttocks together to make a juicy giant peach. Have either of you ever squeezed someone's buttocks together to make a juicy giant peach?
No.
No comment.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.